from the Good Shepherd Library in Inwood, New York City. Welcome to Inwood Art Works on Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home what we affectionately call upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome local musician and composer Lee Feldman. Lee was born in 1959 here in New York City. He's based here in New York as a songwriter, pianist, singer, and composer. He has released 5 critically acclaimed albums under his own name, including Living It All Wrong, The Man in a Jupiter Hat, I've Forgotten Everything, album number 4, Trying to Put the Things Together That Never Been Together Before, and Dr. Future. He has extensive training in classical piano, jazz piano, and composition. In spite of that, he writes music that has meaning and sticks to the brain. He lives in the Northwest Bronx with his wife and 2 children, and we are thrilled to welcome here today on Inwood Art Works on Air. So let's now listen to a track from Lee Feldman.
It takes 2 to untangle. It takes 2 to be together or apart. It takes a lot more than I've got, but I'm here. I'm here. In Vietnam, I used to ramble, and the trees were my friend, my friend. I used to think, man, this job can really stink, but I'm here. I'm here. Going to unravel, 'cause I'm not gonna travel again. But if I do, I'll be seeing you, 'cause a knot takes 2 to untangle.
Thank you for being with us here today. Welcome to Inwood Art Works on Air.
Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's I'm happy to be part of your community building in the upstate New York City.
I always like to call it upstate Manhattan because
Manhattan,
it's
yes.
silly, and you know what? Some people take umbrage to it because you know why? They have nothing else better to do but pick on something.
No.
But I say it very tongue in cheek for those of you who are pretending to be offended somewhere. It's fun because I truly, when I first moved up here 21 years ago, people were like, Inwood, I think there was the subway maps that even go like on the like when you're there, there's cut off above like 110th Street or something.
Yes.
So it was kind of like I used to say also right below Canada is where I used to live, which is actually true as well. But you know what I mean though, because you got to cross the water to you, and it's you're right. You're just literally a stone's throw across from Inwood.
Yeah, I live in Riverdale. My family and I live in Riverdale. We lived there since 2013. And before that, I was in Williamsburg for 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just right across the river both times, huh?
Near the river.
Yeah, we got it's good to be around the. It's very
good to be by
rejuvenating
the
the
river.
water. It's good to be by the exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, before we get too far into things,
Yes.
can you tell us what we just heard?
That song is called "It Takes Two to Untangle," and it's from my album "The Man in a Jupiter Hat."
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that was, I believe, in 2000. You recorded that, right?
Actually, it was recorded in 1998. It was released in 2000.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to hear the whole story associated with that, but that's kind of an
Well,
interesting.
we like it behind the music, behind the life behind the song.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief kind of history leading up to that
give us the
album.
Cliff
I
Notes.
mean, my first album was called "Living It All Wrong." I put it out independently, and then it got signed by a small label called Pure Records, and that was in 1996. And it got so many good reviews that I got signed to Mercury Records.
That's a big label at the time.
It's a big label at the time. And I got signed in 1998. And we recorded "The Man in a Jupiter Hat" in, I think, August of 98. And then in November of 98, Mercury's parent company, Polygram, was bought by Edgar Bronfman of Seagram's fame. And who was an aspiring songwriter himself, and he wanted to get into the music business. So he did.
Nothing worse than people with money trying to do
yeah,
things.
he did, and he bought Polygram. And then, I didn't know whether I was dropped from the label. I didn't know what was happening. It took a year to even find out whether I was dropped or not. And then they said, "Yeah, you're dropped, and but you can put it out." So that's why I recorded it in '98. But then I put it out on my own in 2000. They still own it. Universal still owns my first two albums, "Living It All Wrong" and "The Man in a Jupiter Hat."
Gotcha.
Universal is the parent company, whatever.
Right.
Corporate.
All that corporate stuff.
Yeah.
They just get in the way, don't they?
In my case, they kind of did.
Yeah. I mean, geez.
I never met Edgar
2 years
Bronfman Jr., but if I do, I'm going to be like,
You're gonna see.
"Geez, dude."
And by the way, Seagram's tastes horrible. No, I'm kidding.
I like Seagram's.
I actually do too as well. But
yeah,
my point is, like, try and get back at the guys. What I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah,
Well, thank you for sharing. It Takes Two,
yeah,
though,
yeah, of
and
course.
very cool song. So everyone loves a good origin story, I feel. So how did you find your way to the piano? I mean,
That's a good question. I started like most, Upper West Side intellectual Jewish kids with piano lessons, and I started when I was 7. So we're talking like 1966. And I took piano lessons privately, and then I started going to Manhattan School of Music preparatory division when I was like 10.
So you're attracted at that point, huh?
Yeah.
Your parents
and
saw something in you, like he likes this. Let's put him
I
there.
liked it. I really did
yeah.
like it. I really liked it a lot. And then I was a classical kid until I moved to the suburbs in the 70s, and then I started playing in a rock band with Edge, with my friend Bob Wimbiel, another Inwood Arts
Been on the podcast.
alumni.
Yes.
And then I started getting into rock music, and then in like 74, 75, then it was kind of jazz rock was coming in. So either it was like jazz rock or new age or punk, really. And I went towards jazz rock. And then so I was doing that. The second album, the second song I think you're going to play is from my album number 4, Trying to Put the Things Together That Never Been Together Before. And that's kind of my whole situation. I'm trying to put these different influences that I have into what I consider a format which is repeatable and memorable and listenable, and that's kind of the brief thing of my project, I think.
I love all that, and
Oh,
it sounds like you got a lot of, the words eclectic tastes,
Eclectic
that,
for sure.
that are coming
Yeah.
together. I mean, that interesting time in the 70s, the melding the classical and also, they had the prog rock movement as well. You had a lot of things going on at that time.
There's so
with
much
punk, new wave, and obviously the jazz stuff was
Yeah.
huge. A very interesting time.
I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but in my opinion, the 70s were just an amazingly golden time for music. With, you still coming out of the Beatles and Bob
Sure.
Dylan. And then, as you say, prog rock. And although I wasn't really into prog rock that much at the time, but, just so much rich, wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
And that obviously influenced all of us who grew up in that time. Yeah.
And when did you start composing?
Pretty young. I mean, I remember. I think the first composition I did when it was like I wrote it out when I was around 11. I think so. Or actually, earlier than that. Now that I think about it, I think when I was like 10 or 9 or 10. Yeah.
Wow. It's like
Yeah.
you like writing music, because you read music, so you're like, I can write music then.
Yes.
That's pretty cool
Exactly.
for a 10-year-old to do.
Yeah, I was a nerd. Yes.
But it made sense to you. It's all that mattered.
Whatever.
You know what I mean?
It seemed
It's
like a good idea at the time.
Well, sure. I mean,
Yes.
the 10-year-old yourself was probably like, I'm sure Johnny upstairs is doing the same thing.
He might have been. He might have
Upper West
been.
Side. Come on, I'm just
Upper West
saying.
Side. We lived in an interesting building. He probably was doing the same thing.
Well, but I was curious though, that's because your classical training and the Manhattan School prep, all
Right.
that lined up. Like you had you had a systems in place. Like you had a lot of people who grew up listening to music and compose. Sometimes to them they hear it in their head or something and starts with an idea.
Yeah.
And they kind of have a different way of going about things. And you had this background. You had you had foundations that a lot of people probably don't have.
I think that the whole thing about foundations is a mixed bag in a way. For me, it's great, and I really appreciate it. And I feel like I'm always. Practicing is my thing. So I really love to practice and learn, and I feel like I'm always getting better. But it's not the only way, and, talking about the Beatles, for example, there are people who don't, Elvis Costello, who don't read music and they find their way. And you could even make an argument that it can be an inhibiting factor, like knowing too much, I think. But for me, yeah, that's the way I went. So.
And actually, it's funny you said at the end there about being too much or inhibiting.
Yeah.
It's like I know a lot of people who they feel trapped and they try to find their way through. I'm making up some kind of improvisation or something like that, like trying to unlearn what they've learned.
Yes,
a little
exactly.
bit to be able to be more present in the music.
Exactly. And, to that end, one of the things that I got into when I went to college was free improvisation. And so, I was doing classical music, then, jazz rock. Then I went to composition, school for composition at Indiana University.
Bloomington, hello, Hoosiers.
In Bloomington,
yes.
hello, Hoosiers, exactly. So I was studying composition, but also I was really involved in free improvisation at the same time, and so bringing together that, like you were mentioning, the present element to like an aliveness, which is there in free improvisation. And as much as I love, free jazz and free improv, it doesn't have the repeatability factor. Because I also, we were talking about, grew up with the Beatles and Dylan, so to have something which both has that element of presence and vitality and immediacy, and then bringing that to a short form, like a 3-minute song, has always been that's what I'm really interested in trying to do,
And here's the interesting thing, I think, too, and a friend of mine just saw Bob Dylan this summer, oddly enough, in Indianapolis, with Mellencamp and everybody. And, Dylan has been playing these songs for 50 years, but there's these same 3-minute songs, though, are almost unrecognizable to some people, and yet it's still "It Ain't Me, Babe." You know what I mean? It's he finds a way of the arrangements, and going back to saying it's his way of being present in the work, because you have 5 albums worth of material that you're, like it or not, chained to for the rest of your life, and people who, like you said, great reviews and want to hear some of these songs, and like you want to honor that,
Yes.
and then you also have to be good to yourself, right?
Yes, well, in my like It Takes Two, there is room for improvisation within
Yeah.
the song. So there is that element of I'm able to bring, and in I think the next song you're going to play also, there's plenty of room for
Sure.
improvisation in it.
Yeah.
So there's that. I bring that, and with Dylan, who's I think about probably too much. I
won't tell him you said that, okay?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I just read that in his first recording session, John Hammond wanted him to do a second, to do another take, and he was like, "Oh, I really would rather not do that. I think that would be a terrible thing to do it twice in a row." So there you go.
There it is. That's
Yeah.
right. That's how
Yeah.
it was then, and it was captured, and there it is.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it was other people's projections onto him saying, "Oh, that's the song." He's like, "No. The song is when I
Well,
play it."
he did. I mean, in those days, he was. When he played it, Ain't Me
Right.
Babe, he was playing it the same way, but it's just over time. He
Yes.
was moving so fast, and I once saw Fela Kuti. I don't know if you
Sure.
saw it, the Afro pop.
And I saw the Broadway show based off of his life
Okay,
too.
there you go.
Which is fantastic.
And people are shouting out albums for Fela, shouting out tunes for Fela to play. So you want to hear that song? Yeah. Buy the motherfucking record. So,
Well, there you
sorry
go.
about that. I hope
Well,
that
that's
wasn't-
okay.
yeah.
It wasn't you. It was Fela talking.
Yeah, it was Fela.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Exactly.
So when did obviously you said you've been well on your way, and for that 10-year-old to moving, you hopped around. When did you say to yourself, "I can"? And you went to IU, obviously, and by the way, great music school, has a great music library there.
Yes.
Hoagie Carmichael's collection's there. I mean, there's
Hoagie
a lot
Carmichael
of the big statue
lived
of him
there,
out
yeah.
there, and there's
Yeah, absolutely.
So tip of the hat to IU.
Yeah.
When did you, after leaving IU and obviously probably playing out and meeting great folks like Bob, did you
Right.
say, "Hey, I can do this as a vocation"?
Well, that's a big question. Vocation.
Yeah, I mean,
and
like
music-
to pursue, like,
Well,
and
I-
everybody has side gigs, everybody has hustle, but it's like, like
Yes.
to walk that path, that's a big decision.
It's a big decision. I guess I really never really thought twice about it at the time. Certainly, I did over the years, and and I've actually recently become a social worker. I went back to school 5 years ago and became a social worker, and now I'm a psychotherapist as well. So there's a lot of stuff that is an interesting, I think, thing about the mixture of vocation and how people do pursue their art. That's a big topic. For me at the time, I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And I did, like you say, I had side gigs to make a living. And, I just started playing a lot of different places. And then in 1987, I think, Roger Peltzman, who was a fledgling producer, heard me perform a song called Carolyn, and he said, "I want to make an album with you," and that's sort of how things happened. Yeah.
Wow, how great is that? Like, I think that's, I interview a lot of people.
Yeah.
And more often than not, there's less of those A&R people out there. We'll call them A&R because they're usually from a company.
Yeah.
But even more rare for independent people to say, "I want to take you on and I want to champion you in some way to put you forward."
Right. I mean, in my case,
Very
I'm very, I don't fit into a box.
Yeah.
So it's very important to have one or two people who really get what you're doing and really care about it, and just having that one person can make a tremendous difference.
You need an advocate. You definitely need an advocate. Or two.
Exactly.
Or two.
Yeah, two helps. Yeah.
Well,
two would be nice.
fast forward to today.
Yeah.
You've had, I like to think that, you said you've taken on these new roles as social worker and psychotherapist.
Yeah.
How has that informed your work and your music and your playing?
Well,
Here in 2024 of all places.
right, 2024 in the future. We're in the future now.
Yes,
Wow.
and
2024.
I feel like we're all we
in
should
the
be
future.
we should all be our the Jetsons should be our neighbors.
should be.
But I just feel like there's you're beginning. We're in January here, 2024.
Yeah.
Start date 2024, and like how
Well, I don't know how it's affected the music so much. I mean, it's affected my life certainly. It's just been a wonderful journey, and with the work that I'm doing and the people, and also it's outward looking towards other people. I think that's the main thing. It's like I'm very much involved now in other people's lives. In social work, it's a certain population, and then in psychotherapy, it's a different thing. So there's just a very nourishing aspect. I mean, I can be draining too, I guess, but it's very nourishing in that way, in that you're really outward looking and helping people to be trite. But it's not, you really are, so that's great. The music part, I don't know how it's affected it. I mean, I still practice all the time, and I practice my Bach and my jazz and my North Indian vocal singing, and I write a song a week, and I don't know.
Nusrat Fateh Khan, maybe, or anything else?
I studied with Fallu. I don't know if you know Fallu. But she studied with one of the Khans, and I studied with her for a bit. So cool. I do those exercises every day.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that tells our listeners right there. There's 3 different, very
it's a
mixed up, very cool styles but you know what? It informs what you're doing. And do you have a project on the front burner? Some new tunes or anything? I mean,
my major project now, songwriting wise, I'm writing a song a week. And that's my major project, and we'll see where it leads. My last album, Dr. Future, came out in 2023, so that's a pretty recent album. So we'll see where this new stuff leads.
Has the neighborhood inspired you at all? In the neighborhood, the water, the geography, the people?
It's a great question. I like to say I moved from Williamsburg, which is the land of hipsters, to Riverdale, which is the land of broken hipsters. People with their nice rides, nice walkers.
Yes. It's like St. Petersburg, Florida. Might get hit by somebody on a roving cart.
It's great. We love it. It's been a great place for our kids. Public schools are great, and we love our building. I just think how has it inspired me. We moved from a very small apartment, under 500 square feet, for 2 of us, 2 children, and 2 cats, and a piano. And I lived there for 27 years, and now we have a nice 3-bedroom apartment in Riverdale. So
amazing.
It's inspired me in that my piano is right by the window, and I can look out over to you guys, right across the Spite and Dival Creek.
Yeah.
And while I'm playing the piano, so in that sense, it's very inspiring. And just as far as just a shout out to this neighborhood, it's a lovely place to live. We find it a lovely place to live, and there's a sense of calmness. I'm sure you feel it too. When you're driving on the West Side Highway and you get past a certain point, you just feel yourself just
absolutely. Once you pass the GW Bridge, it feels like
your temperature direct.
Really.
It's something. Yeah,
totally agree with you. And I had I like you. We gig downtown for certain things, and I had to explain to people about uptown, and they many of them still have never been above 110th Street, which is fine by me.
Yeah,
keep them away.
Absolutely.
Keep them away. We'll keep it to ourselves as much as possible, except for those of you listening here today. So what can you say?
Yes.
Well, I think this is a good point to. We've talked about it a couple times. Let's share another tune with our listening audience. So will you introduce it, please?
Well, this is called Subtle Flagellating Pulse Baby in a Christian Fabric Memory Dress.
I think he stole it from King Crimson somewhere. I'm pretty sure. It sounds like a King Crimson title, or Guided by Voices, one of the two.
It might be. Well, let's hear it.
It's a lovely. I love the title. Let's go to the song.
Christian fabric memory dress. at the prophets with a stuttering finger. Pointing at the prophets with a stuttering finger. Pointing at the prophets with a stuttering finger. Stuttering finger. Subtle, flagellating pulse, baby in a Christian fabric, memory dread. Employed by a man named Ploy, and you're still swill. Swallowing numbers. Making a music connection. Doppelgangers, funky, then I'm supposed to laugh with the planks of the four ships in Bonald's bathtub, crying like broken homunculi.
Well, I think it was very much appropriate name for that song. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I don't think there could be another name for it. That song is, a lot of, there's that famous question like, well, what comes first, the words or the music? And Richard Rodgers said the check, which is a good answer, I think, But for me, the words tend to come, well, I don't know. They come at the same time. I do a lot of automatic writing, though, kind of surreal as just whatever comes out. And I
Little,
think
little stream of consciousness.
stream of consciousness. Yes. So I think that those lyrics probably came out of just, notebooks filled with stuff. And I'm looking back, subtle flagellating pulse baby in a Christian fabric memory dust. That sounds kind of interesting.
Almost sounds like an insult.
It could be, I guess so. It like, yeah. And I was going to say Shakespearean, but I don't think.
No, I don't think it scans.
No,
maybe Alexandrian. I don't know. We'll have to see the feet.
One of your listeners,
the weak strong.
One of your listeners will let us know.
Yes, I'm sure. But it does sound poetic.
Yes, and we were talking about improvisation, and I think that at least part of my feeling of the electric work of Miles Davis, where you have like a long period of a beat and a groove. Well, a groove and something harmonic going on, but then layered on top of that some other stuff. And so I think that's what probably I was thinking about when we were recording that. Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we let go of you and go out and experience the pastoral here of Inwood Hill Park, do you have any advice for up and coming composers and players who have varied interests like yourself trying to get their work out there?
It's a great question. I would say, really be, people have said it before, but it's true. Be true to yourself. I just read the monk said a genius is somebody who's most like himself.
Thelonious Monk or a monk?
Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk.
The monk himself.
Yeah. So I think there's something about that, just being yourself. And as far as, advice, career advice, I don't know. It's everybody has a different path, and you never also know where things are going to lead. So I would just say good luck, everybody.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Lee, where can we send people online to find out more about your work?
LeeFeldman.com.
Okay.
LeeFeldman.com. And all my music is on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube and all of that. Yeah.
So, folks, you got your marching orders. Head to Yon Spotify and check them out. All right, Lee. Once again, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely has been. Looking forward to more good times ahead.
Yep.
Thanks to Lee Feldman for joining me on this Artist Spotlight episode of Inwood Art Works On Air. It's where I meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home here in Upper Manhattan and Northwest Bronx. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcast. 5 stars. It really does help. Many thanks to the Church of Good Shepherd for hosting us and to HideSites.com for uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation to InwoodArtworks.nyc/donate or via Venmo. Be sure to follow us on social media to keep up all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. Inwood Art Works On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. And Inwood Art Works programming is made possible by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Art Works On Air.